Like I said, today we're gonna go over leg day structure, how to structure a leg day based on your own personal goals, preferences, needs, etc., however you wanna phrase it. So kind of dive into the layout there. First and foremost, if you need to warm up, warm up. If you have any movement restrictions, anything you need to do in order to move better, in order to make those exercises that are gonna be the main meat and potato exercises for strength, hypertrophy, whatever your goals are, get ready to move, get ready to do those well. So if you can walk in the gym and you can do warm-up sets of that exercise and do it well, then do that. If you can't, then get a little bit more detailed. Go watch my warm-up video for lower body. That'll kind of go into the more, more fine details of where we need to look to warm up. Other than that, we're gonna kind of break things into a hinge pattern, a squat pattern, knee extension, knee flexion, and then something unilateral. Obviously, we can throw in calves. Obviously, if we need more volume somewhere, we can throw in some more volume for glutes, hamstrings, quads, etc. But that's gonna be kind of the general layout of our leg day. We'll get into a little more detail on each exercise. Second unilateral work. The main purpose here is not gonna be glute focus or quad focus, other people are doing with split squats. Goal here, check hip function. So stand on one leg, deviate center of mass. I'm going bilateral here from loading purpose. We can go ipsilateral, contralateral. Purpose isn't to bias glute or bias quad. We have a plethora of machines in here meant to do that. Instead, we're just checking hip function, standing on one leg, making sure that we can keep doing things in order to train for hypertrophy, train for strength, etc. So don't get too twisted, don't get too caught up in like, oh, rear foot elevated, it's more quad, or glute, front foot elevated, it's more whatever. If you are working with limited machines, limited equipment, then sure, we can get to that level, but the majority of people that I talk to are training in a real gym. We have a leg press, we have a hack squat, pendulum squat, we have heel wet, we have all these tools. So don't get too twisted with that. The purpose here, we're doing rear foot elevated. I'm trying to get better at staying more weight on one leg. I will make a deeper video, probably a full YouTube video, going into the nuances of split squats. So regular split squats, rear foot elevated, front foot elevated, ipsilateral, contralateral, bilateral, big words, whatever. Different loading, different types of loading. Different ways of loading the front leg, back leg, etc. But for the most part, like whenever somebody asks me about quad focus or glute focus split squats, all the same people who ask me this question are also doing a hack squat, also doing a leg press, also training in like a nice gym. I'm rarely asked this question from somebody who doesn't have access to a full gym. So don't get too caught up in that. We have all these tools. Let's use this tool for the best purpose that we have it for, which is training unilateral, training hip function, standing on one leg, making sure that we keep pushing output, stay healthy, keep stability, do the things that we need to push performance in the gym, get bigger, get stronger, get faster, whatever your goal is. Talking about hinging, I think it's important for everyone to have a good hinge in their program, especially if you want to get a fat ass, get some nice hamstrings. And my program today, I have barbell RDLs. Barbell RDLs are gonna have the highest ceiling floatability, so I think it's good to get to a point where most people can do a barbell RDL. Not everybody has to, but I think it's a pretty good goalpost to aim for. Hinging well, some things we're gonna look at, I'll go over once I get in here. So with our hinge, what we don't want is to be drifting back a lot, right? The difference between a hinge and a squat. Hinge is gonna be horizontal movement of the pelvis. A squat's gonna be more vertical movement of the pelvis. So here, we want hips moving back. When my hips stop moving back, I'm gonna stop range of motion, right? So big thing you'll see is people will get back into their heels. You see my knees drifting back as I go. I'm really weak in my heels right here. I wanna get where I'm strong. So I'm gonna get into my midfoot. When I say midfoot, talking about here, right? The balls of my feet. I'm trying to get my weight into my midfoot. So every rep, I'm gonna cue soft knees, midfoot, hips back. Another thing, most people with their hinge wanna get way too fucking wide. I don't wanna be here, my toes pointed out. A lot of people resort to that. I wanna get more hip width, toes straight, because I want my knees to be able to push more forward than push out. If I'm hinging here, I can't get any internal rotation on my hip. I'm not gonna use my glutes very effectively. I go toes straight, get my knees more forward. I can get IR at the hip. I can lengthen my glutes, use my glutes better to extend the hip, grow a fat ass, have a strong deadlift, whatever your goals are. Let's talk about structuring based on your priorities. So the way that I look at it, meat and potatoes, big rock stuff, more often than not, it's gonna come first. So for today, that was our bilateral, unilateral work. heavy RDLs, heavy pendulum squats. If I'm trying to limit load, if load management is needed, whether it's an injury, introducing a new skill, for whatever reason, if I'm trying to keep load down, then I might put in some pre-exhaust tactics, or I might kind of move things around to make those less loadable. So for example, if I'm doing pendulum squat third today, I'm gonna be able to do less weight on that than I would if I did it first in the day. Second, as far as prioritizing things, whatever I wanna be strongest on, whatever I wanna push the hardest, that's gonna go first. So if I'm in a position, first and foremost, I've gotten to a point where movement's standardized, I have no hip, knee, back issues, whatever, I can push whatever I want to. Whatever I want to prioritize is going to come first. So you see a lot of bodybuilders putting hamstrings first, they're going to prioritize hamstrings. Nothing special about that. It's just whatever we put first is going to get the most of our neurological, physiological resources. Whatever we put last is going to get a little bit less juice, right? As we train, kind of dump out those resources, we get a little bit more tired. It's harder to push as hard as if we did those things first. So whatever you put first, or you want to prioritize, put first. So if I want to do, if I'm trying to grow my glutes and hammies, I'm probably going to prioritize the first couple of exercises of the day to glutes and hammies. If I'm trying to prioritize quads, probably going to prioritize the first couple of exercise slots for my quads. Nothing special to that. Just kind of understand the principle of, like, as we get tired, output's going to go down. As we're less tired, we have more room to push harder. So place things accordingly. All right, so C1's going to be pendulum squat. It's going to make our more squatty-based movement. So we did unilateral work, hinge, something squatty. I think it's important to differentiate between a squat and a hinge. Hinge, like I said, horizontal movement of the pelvis, so pelvis back to front, front to back. Squat's gonna be more vertical. So just because something is a squat doesn't mean that it's a squatty squat, right? It can still be a hingy squat. So if my squat looks more like this, right? Like, it's not really a squat. Like, it is a squat, but it's not a squatty squat. The goal with quads is we want to be able to get this good knee travel over toes. So let's make sure we're setting up on the pendulum squat in a way that's gonna be more of a squatty squat. Knees over toes, pelvis will be vertical regardless because of the nature of the machine. But we'll hop in here. What a lot of people wanna do is put their feet way too high and wide. So first off, we're not gonna get good forward knee travel because my feet are too high, right? My knees are still over my ankles. Second off, most people when their feet are too wide are gonna struggle to get into deep knee flexion. So what I wanna do, put my feet in a spot where I can get full knee flexion, right? So I'm talking ass to grass, hams to calves, however you're gonna say it, with good forward knee travel. So good forward knee travel. If my heels are coming up, I'm gonna move my feet up a little bit. So I don't wanna have my heels coming up. I still want full foot pressure. Toes don't have to be straight. I don't know why people think it's a good idea to squat with your toes straight. Most people aren't gonna have the structure or the mobility to squat with toes straight. Toes a little bit out is probably gonna be best. Finish up your leg day. Another way to kind of look at it is like main compound skill work first. Hinges, RDLs, back squat, front squat, if you're doing those things. If you're not doing any more skill-based movements, our more heavy output-based stuff's gonna be first. And finishing up with like isolation. It's kind of like skill, output, isolation. So for lower body, knee extension, knee flexion. So really quads, hamstrings, quad extensions here for today. We're gonna do a seated hamstring curl or prone hamstring curl, whatever's available. And then if you want more glute stuff, you can do like a hip thrust, 45-degree hip extension, adductor work, abductor work, whatever your goal is there. Don't worry too much about toes in, toes out. Main thing's going to be getting into a position where we can get full knee extension. So wherever that is as far as knee placement goes, usually we kind of want to get hip, knee, foot in a straight line. Pull these handles, so I don't want to get overextended. I don't want to get overflexed. I want to stay in a nice strong flex position where I can get full knee extension. And then I'm going to pull my toes towards me. So actively going to dorsiflex. That's going to lengthen my calf over my knee joint. Give me a little bit more knee stability. If you look at research too, it's going to show that we can load our quad extension a little bit better when we're in dorsiflexion versus plantar flexion. Probably going to destabilize the knee. Being in plantar flexion plus knee flexion, probably going to be actively insufficient at the calf, so it's going to destabilize the knee a little bit. Output's going to be lower. That's kind of the theoretics behind it. Finishing up today, prone hamstring curl. So knee flexion, isolation. Your options are basically prone hamstring curl, seated hamstring curl, standing hamstring curl, slider curl, for the most part, the best, in my opinion, is going to be seated hamstring curl if we're going for output. I did an entire video on hamstring stuff and seated hamstring curl setup. Today we're going to do prone hamstring curl. It's already loaded my hamstrings and hip extension on the RDL. I'm now going to load them in a more shortened position on the prone hamstring curl. I see the prone hamstring curl actually is more of like an advanced exercise. It's a lot harder to execute without technical failure than a seated hamstring curl is. So limitations are going to be, one, the pelvis moving around a lot. That's really not the biggest one. The biggest one is a lot of people actually struggle to get into full knee flexion because they lack the hip mobility and they lack mobility of the lower limb to actually get into full knee flexion. So if you can't passively fully flex your knee, how are you going to do it when we're loading it here on the prone hamstring curl? If you're a more intermediate to beginner lifter, opt for the seated hamstring curl for output. This I like more as a constraint on the pelvis, so learning how to control the pelvis, and also kind of as a test to make sure we can actually get full knee flexion. Wrapping things up, we want to cover unilateral movement. Don't get too into the details about quad glute stuff on that if you have access to a full gym. So unilateral movement, something squatty, something hingy, knee flexion, knee extension, isolated hip extension, adduction if you need that, calf work if you need that. Prioritize what you need the most first. So whatever you want the most of your resources to go to, whether it's a strength movement, whether it's a heavy output movement, whether it's isolation stuff for specifically hamstrings or quads or whatever. Put that stuff first. You're gonna get the most of your resources there. If you have any issues, you need load management, kind of put some pre-exhaust stuff first, but for the most part, we're looking at unilateral, hinge, squat, isolation stuff. Cover those, arrange them in the order that's going to best fit your goals, your needs, etc. Train hard.